We're joined on the phone today by author Mark Bego. We're talking about his new book, Rocket Man, all about Elton John. Hey, Mark, how you doing today?
I'm excellent. How are you doing?
I'm excellent. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I know you are always putting books out, it seems. You got a new one out here, Rocket Man. Can you tell the listeners a bit about the new book?
Well, I have had a love and fascination for Elton John and his music for decades, literally decades, since 1969, actually, which is amazing to think about. And he has been creating music since the 60s. I first heard a song called Lady Samantha on a Three Dog Night 1969 album called Suitable for Framing. Loved that song. I used to read, I still do, read all the liner notes on albums. I'm an album buyer. I'm not a downloader. I want the liner notes. So I knew who Elton John was when his debut album came out in 1970. Bought it, loved it, and I bought every album ever since. And when I listen to someone that I really enjoy their music, it makes me wonder what they're like, what their life is like, what were they thinking when they created this music. And that kind of became the basis for my new book, Rocket Man.
And I know you had a book out previously about Elton John. Is this kind of an overhaul of that book, or is this brand new stuff?
In a way, a lot of the research hasn't changed. I went back and went through my notes and added some new things, put a new beginning on it, a new ending, which encompassed so many things that have happened since the 2009 version of my Elton John biography, which was called The Bitch Is Back. Unfortunately, when that book came out, the company went bankrupt about 5 minutes later, so no one really saw this book in America. It did really well overseas, but this now, as Rocket Man, is a chance for this material to really find an audience, and I'm so thrilled. Writers like myself can research things for years and not have something published. And then suddenly the subject becomes of fascination to the public again. And this has happened with Elton, with his movie and everything else that he's done, his farewell tour, and all the creativity he's involved in. So I think the 2019, I should say, was really kind of the year of Elton John, in the movies, in the bookstores, on tour, see him everywhere. So I think this book will fill in a lot of the blanks in people's minds as to what's he been doing all these years? What is every era like for him? I mean, we've certainly grown up with him in a way, his flamboyant 70s, his drug-addled 80s, his kind of masquerade marriage to a woman in the 80s, his coming out as gay, his drying out, his just amazing. I mean, there's so much to talk about.
Definitely, Elton John, as you mentioned, is in the public eye again in a big way. And again, Mark Bego with us. We're talking about his book, Rocket Man. And Mark, can you tell us a bit about how you put this book together? I know he's had, as you mentioned, a real storied career, and you had a chance to interview a lot of the collaborators and friends and people in his career.
Well, the fortunate thing about my career is that I've met so many incredibly talented rock stars. And I was able to go back to a lot of them and talk about what it was like for them to work with Elton John at different phases of his life. For instance, I talked to two of the guys from Three Dog Night about, discovering Elton John in London when he was just knocking on the door of the backstage door of clubs trying to get in and sell his songs to people. I talked to Angela Bowie, David Bowie's ex-wife, about what it was like for him to be in England alongside David Bowie, trying to sell their songs to people who buy TV and commercial jingles. And I've interviewed people he slept with, people he did drugs with, people he wrote music with, people who don't like him, people who love him. So I think I presented just about every angle in here. I would like to think I did.
And of course, you mentioned the movie Rocket Man was a big hit, but with a career like his, you really need a book like yours to really go, kind of in depth into all the details of the career you're mentioning.
Well, it's true. Everyone who fell in love with the movie Bohemian Rhapsody, I'm sure wanted to know more about Freddie Mercury. Well, with Elton's movie, since it is kind of a fantasy of a movie where he takes songs from different eras and uses them like he would in a Broadway musical, it leaves a lot of questions in people's minds as to what the real story was. what really happened? What are the details of this? What did he feel like when this was happening, when that was happening? What's missing from that movie? I think you'll find it in my book. There's so much to talk about.
Well, with that being said, how tough is it to take a career and a life, like Elton John or, like a lot of the people you've written books about over the years and, fit it into a book that doesn't wind up, being 1,000 pages?
Funny you should say that. There's about 250 pages that got cut out of this book. There was so much to write. It would have looked like the phone book for Manhattan. I mean, it was an amazing amount of material. And there's so much to talk about, so much music to listen to and critique and discover what was the inspiration for this music. It goes on and on. So many people really, have been touched by Elton, as we've mentioned. I spoke to Randy Jones, the Village People, about a wild party that Elton John threw for the Village People in the late 70s. Imagine, the drug and booze and boy-filled parties he used to throw back then. Just crazy, wild and crazy. And he's still with us. He did an OD somewhere. He went to dry-out clinics and got himself in rehab, and thankfully he's with us and has survived so much in his life. And it makes for such a fascinating topic. I mean, the movie that he did could have been an 8-hour miniseries easily and still left out things.
Definitely. And you mentioned Elton on his farewell tour. Elton John, a lot of other people have had, numerous farewell tours over the years. Do you think he'll really hang it up this time, or will he eventually maybe get bored and wind up back on the road again?
To my knowledge, just right off the top of my head, this is the third time he's announced that he's retiring. How many farewell tours did Frank Sinatra do? How many farewell tours is Cher going to do? I think Elton's going to join those ranks. What I see for him is that since he loves to perform for people so much, I can see him back in Vegas with a residency show. I'm sure that running around the world with all the sets and props like he's doing at the moment is exhausting. So I could see him staying in one place and performing because he's someone who absolutely loves to perform for an audience. So I think there's a lot more creativity coming from Elton John.
Well, Mark, you've had a lot of books out over your career. How do you keep it all straight? I mean, it seems like you do so much research on these people, and then, after as many books as you've had, it would seem pretty tricky to keep everything in line.
Well, what I do is I kind of immerse myself into whatever subject I'm working on. I'm someone who, like Elton John, loves a record collection. I'm one of those people who refuses to download music. I want the liner notes. I want everything. I want to see the movie. I want to watch the concert video. I want to listen to the music in my car. And I kind of really immerse myself in the life and creativity of whoever it is I'm writing about, whether it's Billy Joel or Michael Jackson or Mary Wilson and the Supremes. It's something that I really find that I have a passion for. I'm someone who gets up and puts on music the minute I wake up. If the stereo's even gone off at night. So when I did this Elton John book, my God, I got a stack of records, CDs, singles, all kinds of things of everything Elton, absolutely everything Elton. So I really get into it, and I'm so happy that this book has really found an audience at a wonderful time in Elton's career, and in my career as well. I'm not done yet either.
Well, yeah, I know Rocket Man is just out here, Mark, but is there something else maybe in the works or something else we should be watching out for?
Yeah, there's like 3 things that I'm working on. I wrote a rock and roll cookbook with Mary Wilson of the Supremes called Eat Like a Rock Star. We are working on developing the TV show with rock star guests. So that's underway. I'm working with the singer Frida Payne, who had that wonderful song Band of Gold back in the 70s. What an amazing career she's had. She's one of Mary Wilson's best friends, and I've known Frida actually since the 70s. I'm working with her. And then I've got another top secret project I'm working on, so stay tuned.
Excellent. Well, again, Mark, Rocket Man looks great, and hopefully when the top secret stuff is brought out here, we can speak again sometime.
I would love that. I'd be honored.
All right. Thanks a lot, Mark.
Thank you very much.
And again, that was author Mark Bego. His new book, Rocket Man, all about Elton John, is available now.